Hi, thank you so much for joining me today. I hope that you're staying healthy and safe. And of course, I hope that you're having an amazing Adobe Max 2020. My name is Jesús Ramirez. I have been a professional graphic artist for over 15 years. Most people probably know me from my YouTube channel, the Photoshop training channel, where I post Photoshop tutorials every week. Let me know in the chat if you're a subscriber. And if you're not, feel free to subscribe at youtube.com/c/Photoshop training channel. This session is titled Automating Photoshop, Indispensable Time-Saving Techniques. I presented a similar session last year at Adobe Max 2019 in LA. And this is the updated version that includes a lot of the new features of Photoshop 2021. Before we start, I want to show you this very important slide that contains my website, email, and social media handle. If you have any questions or comments, then this is the email where you can reach me. And if you're sharing screenshots and posting on social media during this session, then feel free to tag me at JRFromPTC on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. Also, this link will get you to a page on my website where you can download every file that I'm going to use in today's examples. If you want to follow along, you can go there now and download the session files. I know that we have a lot of people watching from all over the world, so feel free to introduce yourself and let me know in the chat where you're watching from. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I grew up. So what's the goal for this session? My goal for this session is to save you on average 120 seconds a day. And that's because 120 seconds a day equals to 2 minutes a day. And if I can save you an average of 2 minutes a day, then that means that in a 5-day work week, I can save you 10 minutes. If I can save you 10 minutes a week, then that means that I can save you 520 minutes a year. And if I can do that, it means that I can save you 8.5 hours a year, which means that you get a free day off of work. So that's my goal for this session, to give you one free day off of work. Let me know in the chat if you would like that free day off of work. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to show you one technique that will save you 2 minutes. Instead, I will show you several techniques that will save you on average about 2 minutes a day. I'm sure that in this session, we have a lot of people who do all sorts of things. Let me know in the chat if you're a photographer, graphic designer, videographer, student, or how you would describe yourself. And as you will see in the chat, we have people from many different fields. So my specific example may not apply to you, but again, look at the techniques and think if there is a way to apply it to your workflow. These are the things that we will cover today. We will work with some of the new features in the selected mask workspace. Then we will look at presets, actions, and droplets, as well as some of the new features in Photoshop 2021, like the sky replacement and the neural filters. Let me know in the chat which of these items you're most interested in learning, and feel free to ask questions along the way. There's a lot to cover in the next 25 minutes, so let's jump right into this session. Okay, we're gonna work with this example first. We have a model standing in front of a busy background, and we're going to try to cut her out. This is not gonna be one of those easy cutouts. I wanna show you the power of this new feature in Photoshop 2021. I'm not going to use the remove background feature that you can access from the properties panel. You can click on this lock icon and we have a remove background feature. That feature works great. The algorithm has improved and it's much better, but I want to show you a different workflow. So with the layer selected, you can go into select, selected mask. By default, you should see the onion skinning mode. And from here, you can start making your selection. For something like this, make sure that you have object aware selected. As you can see from the tooltip, this is the best choice for hair or fur cutouts on complex backgrounds, which is exactly what we have. So I'll click on that, I'll press OK, and then I'll click on select subject, and Photoshop will make a selection which is very good out of my model here. I can increase the transparency so you can see what that looks like. Really, really good job. I'll also change the view to on black so you can get a better look at that. I think it looks really good for just one single click. One of the other options that is brand new in Photoshop 2021 is the remember settings option. So for example, you may be working on a project where you're often applying the same global refinements to your mask. So you may apply some smoothing to remove the jagged edges from your mask. You may also apply some contrast to make the edges sharper, and you might shift the edge inward to prevent any edge halos or any white outlines on the edges. And as long as you have remember settings checked, Photoshop will remember these settings the next time you apply the selected mask workspace to a layer mask. When I press OK, Photoshop will apply that mask to my layer. But if I go to another image, for example, this pillow here, I can go into the Properties panel, make sure that my layer is unlocked, and I can click on Remove Background. Photoshop will remove the background. When I go back into the selected mask workspace, you'll see that Photoshop will remember the last settings that I used because I clicked on this checkbox. When I press OK, Photoshop will apply those adjustments to my new layer mask. Also brand new in Photoshop 2021 is this new preset feature. In this case, we'll use this model. She's on a solid background, so the remove background button is going to work great, as you can see. And if I click on the layer mask, I can also click on selected mask from the properties panel. So as you can see, there's a lot of ways of accessing the selected mask workspace, and the settings that we applied are there. But what if we want to save these settings so that we can always use them, even if we choose not to remember the settings, but we still want to save these? What we can do is save a preset inside of the selected mask workspace, and that is brand new to Photoshop 2021. And all you need to do is under presets, click on the drop down and click on save preset. You can just call it mask. Click on save, and now that preset is there. So if I uncheck this and just reset my sliders to 0 and press OK, when I come back into the selected mask workspace, I'll be able to select that preset from the drop down. See that? Max Mask. So it's a brand new feature in Photoshop 2021. Let me know in the comments what you think about the select and mask presets and the remember setting checkbox. Really, really cool, I think. Now let's look at a different kind of preset. And these are the presets that you can find in an adjustment layer. These presets help you remember a pre-established location or a presetted location of a slider so that you can apply the same adjustment effect to multiple images, not just one. So in this case, we're going to work with this photo and we're going to apply a color grade. We're going to use the orange teal effect. This is a combination that you often see in movies, especially blockbusters. So I'm going to show you how to create that and show you how to create a preset. We're going to use one of my favorite adjustment layers, which is the selective color adjustment layer, which allows you to apply or subtract a color to a color. And I know that sounds confusing, but I think it'll be pretty self-explanatory once you see it in action. First, I'm going to select the color that I'm going to adjust. I'm going to select the neutrals. And then I can add or subtract a color. I can add cyan or subtract cyan, which gives me the opposite color, which is red. I can add magenta or subtract magenta, which gives me green. Or I can add yellow or subtract yellow, which gives me blue. So to apply the orange teal effect, I'm going to add a little bit of cyan first. And you can see the effect that that's going to apply to my image. I can reduce magenta to get a little bit of green and subtract yellow to get blue to get this effect. I can also increase the black to make the image pop a little more. And I can go into the blacks and do something similar. Add cyan, subtract magenta, and make it a little bit darker like so. I added a lot of cool colors, especially to the skin tones, and that's looking a little bit unnatural. So what you can do is go into the reds and subtract cyan, add magenta, and add yellow. So you're counteracting those earlier adjustments to try to get a more natural skin tone. Obviously, we can keep fine-tuning these sliders all day, but we don't have that much time, so we'll just stick to these adjustments. So I like the effect, and I would like to save this effect so that I can apply it to multiple photos. One way I can do that is by selecting my adjustment layer, and from the flyout menu in the properties panel, I can save the selective color preset, and I can give it a name. I'll call it Cool Max Effect, and I'll save it. I'll delete the adjustment layer. Now, anytime that I create a selective color adjustment layer, under presets, I will have that option, and all I need to do is select it, and the sliders go into those presetted locations. So this is a good way of saving your color grades inside of Photoshop. Now, what happens if your adjustment has multiple adjustment layers, not just one? Let me just create a few more adjustment layers to create a different effect. I'm going to create a levels adjustment layer, and I'm going to drag the black point to the right so that the darkest color is no longer black, is this shade of gray. And I'm going to drag this slider to the left so that the brightest color is no longer white, is this shade of gray. Now I can adjust the gamma just a little bit, and I can create a new vibrance adjustment layer and decrease the vibrance a little bit. So I'm creating this really flat look based on that original effect we created. So how do I save this effect so that I can apply it to multiple images at the same time? Well, the key is to put them all into a group first and then put them into a library. Let me show you how to do that. With the top layer selected, I'm going to hold Shift, click on the bottom layer to select all the layers. Then I'll press Ctrl G on Windows, Command G on the Mac, and I can call this effect Cool Max Effect number 2, because we had one before. So there we go. Now I can go into the Libraries panel. If you don't see it, you can go into Window, Libraries, and all you need to do is drag your folder into a library. I have a library called Max 2020 Automating Photoshop, which is this session, of course. And you can see some of the photos that we are using in this session. And here it is, Cool Max Effect 2. And if I were to delete this group and drag this effect in here, nothing will happen. And the reason that nothing will happen is because you do have to hold down a keyboard shortcut when you drag it back into the layers panel. So when you're dragging one of these effects back into the layers panel, all you need to do is hold Alt on Windows, Option in the Mac, and drag out, and Photoshop will place the group with all the layers, and you can of course adjust the layers if you want. So everything remains editable. This is a fantastic way of saving your color grades by simply putting them into a group and dragging them into a Creative Cloud library. It's a great way to work and a big time saver. Let me know down in the comments below if you knew this technique or if it's something that you're using now. Also, if you have any questions, leave them down below. In talking about presets, let me show you one new feature in Photoshop 2021 that helps you stay connected with all your presets. If you press Ctrl K on Windows, Command K on the Mac, you'll open up the Preferences panel, and from here, you'll see the preset syncing options. Make sure that this is enabled, and that's all you need to do. With this option enabled, you'll be able to sync brushes, swatches, gradients, patterns, styles, and shapes on all your computers. It's super useful. Let me show you what I mean by that. If you were to go into Window and then select the Brushes panel, it will come up. So that means that Photoshop will sync everything that's in here among all your computers. The same thing is true for the Gradients panel, Patterns panel, Shapes panel, Styles panel, and Swatches panels. So make sure that you enable it so you can have all your presets synced. We don't have a lot of time, but I do want to show you one quick technique for creating patterns. So I'm going to go into File, New, and I'm going to create a document that is 1000 pixels by 1000 pixels, and I'll press Create. And let me show you a new feature in Photoshop 2021 that will allow you to speed up your workflow when creating patterns. I'm going to create a very simple pattern, but I think that you'll get the idea. I'm going to go into Filter, Render, Clouds, and then I'm going to enable this new feature, View, Pattern Preview. I'll press OK, and I'll zoom out. And now Photoshop is tiling everything that's in my canvas all around it so that I can preview what a pattern would look like. And that way, now I can disable the lock so I can click and drag on my pattern and work on the seams. You can see the seams here. There's so many ways to remove seams. One of the simplest ways is to use the spot healing brush tool and just paint away those seams like so. And then click and drag again to make sure that there's no seams in other areas that I missed, like in these areas. And just keep making changes until you remove all the seams. Then you can apply more effects. You can go into Filter, Stylize, Emboss, and you can press OK. And if you need to remove any seams from here, then find them and remove them. Obviously, with more time, I can create something more complex, but this feature is very, very useful. Let me know in the chat what you think. I think is one of the coolest new features, especially for designers who often create patterns. To disable it, just go into View, Pattern Preview, and then you can just go into the Patterns panel. And from here, just click on the plus icon and you can create a pattern out of this image. And you'll already know what it looks like when it is filled because you saw it in the pattern preview. Fantastic new tool in Photoshop 2021. Next, let's move on to creating actions in Photoshop. Actions are very, very powerful, so let's take a look at those next. What I'm going to do is go into File, Open, and I have this folder called Houses, and I'm just going to open up Home number 1 and press OK. And before I actually create an action, I'm going to show you what an action is. So if you go into Window and select Actions, you'll open up the Actions panel. And by default, you should see the default actions. And I'm just going to click on Wood Frame and click on Play so that you can see what happens. Photoshop will create a wooden frame around your image. It's not necessarily the best action in the world, but it sort of helps me illustrate what an action is. An action is just a set of commands inside of Photoshop. That's it. So this particular action tells Photoshop to apply all these different steps, and the result is a wooden frame. There's a misconception that actions are just for beginners or actions are just for people who want to create an effect like a wooden frame. And that's not really the case. I consider actions to be beneficial to anyone who's doing repetitive steps over and over again. So if you're doing something that requires 10, 15 seconds, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps, then consider making an action. That way you can save yourself those few seconds, which will add up to those 120 seconds I told you about in the beginning of this session. Let me give you some examples. I have this Max Sessions action set that you can download for free on my website, ptcviz.com/max2020. And you'll have access to this ATM file where you can install these actions if you like. But these are just a few examples of actions that I created to help me in my workflow. What I'll do first is go into File and Revert to bring my image back to how it was when I first saved it. And I have actions that help me adjust the interface. One thing I should mention is that you can play an action in one of two ways. You can select it from this View Dark Interface and click on Play, and that changes my interface. That's what that action does. Or I can go into the button mode, and from the button mode, I can just simply click on the action and it applies it. So as you can see, I have actions that change my interface. I do a lot of compositing work, so I have an action that removes all my empty layers. So if I have a whole bunch of empty layers, like I do here, I can just click on Delete Empty Layers, and Photoshop just goes ahead and deletes the layers that don't contain anything. That way, my files remain as clean as possible. If I had an object, let me show you an object and also show you a new feature in Photoshop 2021. I'm going to select the Polygon tool, and I'm going to click and drag to create this shape. I have Shape selected, and from the Properties panel, I have these options for this live shape, and they're super cool. You can adjust how many points this shape has. You can adjust the curvature of those points. You can also adjust the indentation of those points. And you can even smooth the indents. If you don't see this checkbox, you can click on this 3-dot icon and it opens it up. But as you can see, there's a lot of options that you can apply to these new live shapes in Photoshop 2021. Go ahead and check them out. They're really, really fun. But anyway, I can move this off to the side here and notice that I have an action that centers my layer on canvas. So I can just click on Center on Canvas, and that layer goes right to the center. So as you can see, these actions are not designed to complete an entire project. They're just designed to save you a few steps. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to think about the things that you often do in your workflow that you can save by just doing one action. So I'm going to show you how to create an action, but I'm going to do it while showing you a brand new feature in Photoshop 2021. And I'm going to go back into the regular view, not the button mode view. To create an action, all you need to do is click on this new action button, and I'm going to call it Replace Sky, because we're going to use the new sky replacement tool inside of Photoshop. Where do I want to save my action? Max Actions is good. Do I want to assign a keyboard shortcut to it? No, I don't need a keyboard shortcut for this. And what color do I want the button to be in the button mode? So we can make it red. And I'll click on record. Now I can go into Edit, Sky Replacement. And this brand new feature in Photoshop 2021 helps you replace skies. First of all, under this drop down, you can select a new sky. Let me just make this smaller so we can see more than one row of skies. And you can see that we can click and change the sky. There's different groups of skies that you can select and apply to your image. A lot of these are amazing. It does a fantastic job. They're really, really cool skies. And you can even upload your own if you like. But in this case, we're going to keep it simple. And we're just going to go with this sky here. Again, I don't have a lot of time to go through all the different sliders. So we'll use the default settings. The one setting I will change is the flip setting. So I can flip the clouds to another side. And I'm going to press OK, and notice what happens here. Photoshop created all these layers to create my sky replacement. What I'm going to do now is save the file. So I'm going to go into File, Save As, Save on my computer, and I'm going to save it in my Houses folder. And the home-01 name is OK. And notice that Photoshop also recorded that. And I'm going to go into File and Close to close the file. And notice that Photoshop also recorded that as well. Now I can stop the recording and I have my Replace Sky action. I have a second one because this is my practice one when I was practicing for this session. So I'm just going to delete that one and just work with the bottom one, which is the one that you and I worked on together just now. What I'm going to do now is go into File and Open, and I'm going to open home number 2. And I'm just going to play that action. And Photoshop will replace the sky using exactly the same sky. It also closed the file because that was part of the action. But if I go into File and Open, you can see it here. And this is the result. It uses the exact same clouds using the same settings. And everything looks fantastic. There it is, before and after. Photoshop does a great job in replacing skies. So now let me show you a really cool feature. But before I do that, I'm going to open up the folder that contains these images. And in this folder, you can see the 2 PSDs. Here they are. And I'm just going to delete them because I don't need them anymore. And I'm going to show you a feature that's been around for a long time, but it's really, really powerful. And it helps you to automate actions in Photoshop. So we only have 3 photos in this folder, but we could have hundreds of photos. It really doesn't make a difference. It'll make a difference in how long the task takes to complete, but we can have as many images as we want in here. And what I want to do is have an action be applied to all the images. And I'm going to use something called a droplet. And a droplet allows you to simply click and drag a folder into it, and Photoshop will run a predetermined action to all the images inside of that folder. So let me show you how that works. I'm going to go into File, Automate, Create Droplet. And I'm going to choose where to save my droplet. I'll save it in the Max 2020 Automating Photoshop folder. I can call the droplet whatever I want. Sky Replacement works. I'll click on Save. From this dropdown, I can select where the action that I want to apply is located. It's located in the Max Action folder. And what action is it? It's the Replace Sky action. Then I can select where to save the files that it creates. I'll save it under the Houses folder. I'll click on Select Folder. And this document name and extension is fine. And I'll press OK. nothing will happen. But watch what happens when I open up that folder again and go back into the Max 2020 Automating Photoshop folder. You'll see this here. That right there is a droplet. And with that droplet, all I need to do is just drag a folder onto it, and Photoshop will apply the action that I selected to the images inside of that folder. So I'm going to replace the sky to those 3 images with one simple drag. So I'm going to select the houses folder, click and drag it into the sky replacement droplet, and Photoshop will run that action on all those images. If I open up the houses folder, you'll see that the PSDs are being generated as we speak. So if I open up the home 01 image, you'll see that it applied that sky to that photo. And let me close this one. That was the old one. I can go back into File and open home number 2 and home number 3. And they will both have that new sky applied to it. And we really didn't do much work. We simply applied one simple action to that droplet, and we drag the folder with those images onto that droplet. So it's a real big time saver. I'm asking you to think what kinds of droplets you can create for your workflow. What can you speed up? What can you automate? Maybe you can let me know in the chat. But now we don't have a lot of time, and there's one more thing I want to show you guys, and I'm going to just open up this portrait image. I'm going to go into File, Open, and I have this image here. Is not the best portrait of me, but I'm going to show you how to use the new neural filters to help you create better retouching. So let me show you what the new neural filters are. With your image selected, you can go into Filter, Neural Filters, and some of these filters are applied in the cloud, not on your computer, so they're going to be a little slower than your regular filters, but the results are amazing. So check this out. I have this filters here, the skin smoothing and style transfer, and then if you click on the beta filters, there's a whole lot more. Some of these are really, really fun. For example, the smart portrait. If I enable that, I can click and drag this Be Happy slider, and we can make this portrait look like I'm really happy. Look at the notice here. It says this filter processes image data in the cloud. And this is the result. Look at that smile. Let me know if you think that smile looks like my smile. I'm not so sure, but it's still pretty amazing that Photoshop was able to generate teeth from nothing, essentially. This is, of course, using machine learning technology. And there's a whole bunch of different ones. We don't really have a lot of time to check them all out, but you can make yourself really young if you like, or you can make yourself older, totally up to you. But the one that I wanted to show you for this class is found here under skin smoothing. So I'm going to enable that, and I'm just going to blur it and smooth it some more just to get some really nice smooth skin. What I'm going to do now is simply output to a new layer, and I'll press OK. And you can see the layer that generated all those new pixels there. What I can do now is hold Alt on Windows, Option on the Mac, and click on the new layer mask icon to create a black layer mask. Black hides, white reveals on a layer mask. So if the layer mask is completely black, I'm hiding everything in that layer mask. But now I can selectively bring back areas by painting with white with the brush tool. So I'll select the brush tool, make sure that my layer mask is selected. White is my foreground color, and I can paint with white here, like so. And you can see how I can selectively bring back the smooth skin. So I'm not really smoothing all of my skin. I'm just targeting areas that would need a little bit of smoothing, and that can help you speed up your retouching workflow because you don't have to create all those adjustment layers, all those filters that you had to in the past to smooth out skin. So you can see the before and the after. It's a subtle adjustment, but I think it works great. And at least in my opinion, subtle adjustments are great for skin retouching. And it looks like we're running out of time. So there's one last thing I want to show you. If you click on this icon, you'll bring up the Discover panel. And from the Discover panel, you have a lot of tutorials, user guides, and things like that that will help you inside of Photoshop. There's also new hands-on tutorials, and I actually have some tutorials in here. If you go into the photo editing section, you'll find an adjust lighting in a photo with levels tutorial and a control photo brightness and contrast with curves. Those two tutorials are by me. You can check them out here. And basically all you have to do is click on Start Tutorial and follow the on-screen guides that will take you through each step of the tutorial. And that's it for this session. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you learned a lot. Let me know in the chat what your favorite technique was, what you're planning on implementing, and also let me know what your favorite new feature of Photoshop 2021 is. And if you want to learn more about me, make sure that you follow me on YouTube at the Photoshop Training Channel. The website is ptcvids.com, and I'm at JR from PTC on all the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, TikTok. Thank you so much for being here with me. I'll catch you again in the next session.